everyone and welcome back to another video where today we are going to be going over the latest Reddit leaks and information from various sources. So obviously take all of this with a grain of salt, and this stuff mainly concerns the future of Doctor Who, but more specifically who the next Doctor could eventually be. And what's interesting about this information is that it's beginning to coalesce from multiple sources, which to me is indicating that potentially we could be getting more of a solid idea of what the future actually holds for Doctor Who moving forward. But we're going to get into all of that. But be sure to subscribe if you're new, that would be greatly appreciated. Like if you enjoy. We're trying to reach 30,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we're currently on like 26,500. Any support would be greatly appreciated in helping us get to that goal. I'd love to get it by the end of the series. We do regular Doctor Who news, updates, reviews. We do talks about viewing figures, theories, all that sort of stuff. So if any of that's your jam, feel free to drop a subscribe. That'd be greatly appreciated. But with all that said, let's dive right in. These are the two actors that the BBC are apparently considering for the 16th Doctor. A few reliable sources on Gallifrey Base and the Doctor Who League Discord channel have recently shared that Richard Gadd and Ambika Mod are apparently two of the actors being considered by the BBC to replace Ncuti Gatwa, who will depart later on this season. So we spoke a bit about Ambika Mod and Richard Gadd in the previous leak video. Those were two names that were suggested in a previous leak. Richard Gadd is the main one I know, who was the lead in Baby Reindeer. Ambika Mod I know less well, but I saw some people saying that she'd be a good choice, so I'll take your words on that. And then it also says the source also heard that actresses Sadie Malone and Agnes O'Casey were brought up in earlier discussions, but they're not sure if anything came of it. So let's take a look at these two actors. Sadie Malone, I couldn't find too much on. They look relatively young, but they're in fact 28 years old, which is kind of crazy because they don't look 28. But I couldn't find too much on them. They don't have a Wikipedia page. They do have an IMDb, and they mainly seem to star in sort of smaller kind of indie films. But they've also been in things like Casualty as well, stuff like that, Wolf Manor. Let me have a look here. 4 O'Clock Club, which I used to love as a kid. So yeah, not a hugely extensive resume, but maybe an unknown would be a good choice, given the issues that we've sort of run into with Gatwa and Gatwa scheduling. I love Gatwa, by the way, and I'm not ready for another Doctor, if I'm completely honest. But if we are to have a new one, I think going more unknown makes more sense, especially if we aren't sure where the Disney deal is going. And the other option is Agnes O'Casey, who I looked up. She's age 30, and I looked on her Wikipedia page. She's an English-Irish actress, mainly from what I can see, known for doing kind of historical dramas and that kind of thing. Lies We Tell, Small Things We Like, The Miracle Club, Black Dove. She was in a Henry VIII kind of miniseries, I think, recently as well. So yeah, Ridley Road as well. So a lot of like kind of high profile stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that a lot of the choices seem to be, female by the looks of things, which again, it can be either now, but I just find it interesting that we're seeing more female actors in the running at the present moment. I wonder if that's to kind of differentiate from 15, who, himself was, male, of course. Maybe we're going to go back to sort of doing a male and then a female and then a male and then a female or something like that. So that's interesting. Obviously, Richard Gadd is still in the running, so he could potentially also get the job. But the BBC and RTD now have a clear idea of where the show is going. Whether this means the Disney Plus deal is still going ahead is in question, and are now starting to begin the process of finding a new Doctor. So this was from Cool Cover on the r/Doctor Who News subreddit. So yeah, this is interesting for a couple of reasons. It obviously suggests that yes, the show is continuing and the BBC and RTD have an idea of what's going to happen to it moving forwards. Obviously, even though the official decision won't be made until after season 2, we won't see it until after season 2. That obviously doesn't mean that conversations aren't happening behind the scenes, and given the fact that we're 5 weeks into this series broadcasting now, I'd imagine that they have a pretty strong idea of whether Disney are going to recommit or not, and whether, Gatwa is going to be able to film again or not. And it looks like, if this is the case, that we are going to be getting a new Doctor for whatever comes next. Whether that is a full series, a mini-series, or, some specials, or whatever it is, it's looking like the choices are becoming more ironclad, more concrete. And we have a second rumour here, ironically posted by the same person, cool cover, whilst not completely kind of contradicting the previous leak, does throw an interesting wrinkle into it. According to another leaker, whose name may or may not be the infamous Andrew, I don't know who Andrew is, were they the person who predicted a lot of the Series 15 stuff? I'm not sure. It turns out 15's open-ended regeneration may not be as open-ended as we thought it was going to be, and the 16th Doctor has apparently been cast. According to Andrew, she is, quote, female and familiar. Make of that what you will. So, there's a couple of things we can take from this. One would be that, obviously, she's a female Doctor, but she's familiar because she's been rumoured before, so maybe Ambika Mod, as an example. Or, and I think by saying female and familiar, you sort of imply either someone who's been in Doctor Who before, or someone who has been the Doctor specifically before. And there are only two actors that really come to mind as to who that could be. I made a previous video talking about the wild theory that Belinda could be the 16th Doctor, that Varadasethu could be the 16th Doctor. I don't think that's happening, as fun as that theory was. I think the much more likely outcome would be Jo Martin reprising the role as a full-on Doctor. Now, whether this would be in the form of just her being the fugitive Doctor for a bit, kind of like what we got with Tennant, or whether it's full-time, remains to be seen, and, you know, whether it would be the fugitive Doctor or a new incarnation. I think, personally, I would prefer a new incarnation that's just also played by Jo Martin. I think that by having it literally be the fugitive, you would kind of overcomplicate things. You could just do the thing they did with Capaldi, where you're like, why do they have this face? And then put a reason in, and you can have Jo Martin as the new Doctor without having to deal with her backstory and her past and stuff. But it does kind of make sense, because we've seen Jo Martin already. You know, she's back in the RTD2 fold with the story in the engine. I highly doubt that they got her in costume and doing interviews just for that one scene. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, they did get Richard E. Grant to, like, go all the way down to their studios just to take some pictures of his head. So maybe it is just the case that she is just there for those 2 seconds. But if you look at, like, the Unleashed, the behind the scenes of the story in the engine, it looks like they filmed a longer interview segment with her that was then truncated downwards into basically something shorter. I will say, if they are doing the cinema release, which we know they're doing for the finale, if it does end with the 15th Doctor regenerating and we're not sure who it's going to be, only for it then to be Jo Martin, which the fan base already seems to like, I could see that getting a good reaction in the cinemas. So that would be, at least according to this, one of the more likely outcomes here. I think I would slightly prefer a new actor or actress take on the role, if only because I think a fresh perspective is always good to get casual audiences engaged. But then another part of me always thinks, I really like Jo Martin and I would like to see her written in a way that, you know, I really would like to see. And I think Russell could do her justice for sure. I mean, season 2 has kind of proven to me that, like, this team has some bangers in them, and it would be interesting to see Jo Martin, who, obviously, even if she is a new incarnation, I would hope would still be a relatively more authoritative and stern Doctor in the same capacity as the fugitive Doctor, which would be a nice sort of counterbalance to Fuji's very, like, optimistic and bubbly Doctor. Maybe they'll do it as kind of, as I said, more of a 60th one-off thing, kind of like a set of specials perhaps, and then it would transition into a more full-time replacement once they found them, maybe Ambika Mold or Richard Gadd or someone else. But they could basically use her as a bridge in the same way that they used David Tennant, if that makes any sense. Either way, it does sound like, from multiple leakers now, that things are beginning to aggregate. Like, we're starting to hear the same few names kind of being brought up in conversations with regards to the 16th Doctor, which you could say is due to them copying and pasting the same names to try and look more legitimate, or you could say is the result of these leaks and rumours beginning to become more substantial as time goes on. I think the good news here is that it essentially is looking like, no matter what's happening with the Disney deal, the BBC are at very least up for giving it one more go, with or without Disney, which is good to know. I think the key difference will just be if Disney aren't involved, it goes back to like 60th level funding, because that was made before Disney got involved. Obviously, I'm sure they gave them a little bit of money to tidy up the VFX maybe, but they were all filmed prior to that agreement, so quite frankly, I think that would be fine. You know, I didn't really notice a massive, like, step up for like season 1 compared to the 60th. Yeah, there's some nice shots in there that maybe they couldn't have done for the 60th, but I didn't feel like it was so drastically like, oh my god, you know, this is a different level, to where it would feel like a downgrade to go back to 60th level visuals. Does that make sense? Like, it's kind of the difference between, for me, like PS4 and PS5. Like, don't get me wrong, PS5 does look nicer than PS4, but it's like, it's not really enough for me to go, wow, this is insane. Do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of PS5 games you can imagine running on PS4. Anyway, I'm rambling. I think, honestly, my preferred outcome of everything would be Ncuti Gatwa staying for a 3rd, if not 4th series, and they do what they did last time where they filmed 2 back-to-back, because I really feel like he's been getting to grips with the role, and I've really been enjoying him, and I would be sad to lose him this early on, but as time's going on, that seems increasingly unlikely, so I kind of have to, like, acknowledge the reality that we could be looking at a 16th Doctor sooner rather than later. As unfortunate as that is for me, because he's really come into his own, in my opinion. What do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comments below. If you do enjoy this video, please give it a like, subscribe if you're new, comment down below who you think out of these, or just in general, you'd like to see as the 16th Doctor, and I will see you later.